I have had the great opportunity to actually be able to try out Dehancer myself, thanks to Dehancer, and test out some of its capabilities, test out if I'd want to use it, and just my honest thoughts on that. So today I'm going to be giving my honest thoughts on what I think about Dehancer, my first thoughts, and if I think you guys should get it. I'm also going to talk about the use cases where I wouldn't use it and would use it, because there are actually cases I wouldn't use it when I'm doing color grading or any film stuff, while there's some places that it's probably the best thing I would be able to have the opportunity to use in certain scenes and all that kind of stuff. Now, this is going to be a big breakdown of Dehancer and all the stuff that I've found out, researched and stuff. So if you listen to certain sections of it, I'm going to have all of them chaptered below, so you don't have to watch through the entire video. You can just skip to the chapters that you want to look at. Now let's jump in and talk about what Dehancer is. It is a film emulation plugin for computers and for phones. Basically, there's been a lot of studies done, put into it to test and emulate realistic film formats. The videos can have that organic grain, organic bloom, all that kind of stuff. It's been tested with a lot of different films to get the closest result to the film itself if you're doing all this via post-processing. Now I'll start with talking about what we have now, which is the age of digital cameras. Digital cameras have a very clean, sterilized look to them. There's less, I guess, characteristic to them than what it was like shooting on film. Now, film has a lot of grain, a lot of ways that it's, marked and that kind of stuff. It has a very organic way of capturing the data of a scene. When it comes to these clinical cameras, you can't achieve that unless you have certain characteristics of lenses. Just the camera's color spaces and stuff are the only way you can really generate any kind of character. Now, if you want to film, you'd either have to shoot on a really expensive film camera, shooting with really expensive film, and then wasting heaps of film if you're cutting bits and pieces. It's just a lot of money to be spent. Whereas Dehancer is a film emulation plugin that we can use in post-processing to simulate what it's like to use those different formats of film and all that kind of stuff. So that's the takeaway of number one for what Dehancer is that it's emulating what it'd be like to shoot on film. The difference between shooting on film and using Dehancer is obviously it's not exactly the same. You don't get the same color depth and density that you would with film, because that's all dependent on how much light is actually captured. Now, if you have a very high-end camera, I'm sure you could capture pretty close to what we could perceive. Dehancer is just to add the characteristic and simulate the effects that the film would have, like the grain, the halation, I forgot what the word is, but it's basically the little letterbox kind of thing that goes around the shot. Now, I will tell you a tiny bit of the backstory behind all this, behind Dehancer, is that it originally started from my research that I was researching on Dehancer. They have all the stuff listed down about the history. Funnily enough, it was a macro to edit photos, and I don't remember if it's Photoshop or it was for something, but long story short, it evolved into what it is today, which is now grown into fully fledged film emulation software for video, which is what I prefer to use. Photo-wise, the ability to control bloom and stuff, I actually never thought of doing it, but since I've tried out Dehancer, I was just editing a few photos the other day on my phone with Dehancer, and it is actually very effective to conveying mood, especially because I had this wedding, I did a test wedding shoot, so I just put in a bit of bloom, added the dynamic, connected the clinical to the organic environment, so then it was less clinical, it was more like gave that oomph to it. Now let's start with the software itself. So the software is based on Windows, Mac, Linux, and iOS. It is also very taxing because of how much processing it uses with the image and contextualizing it within the color space transforming that it does with the film, trying to emulate the film colors and all that kind of stuff. You can also use it in Photoshop, so it's pretty handy to have a plugin that can run in all of those things. So let's start with the video side of things. The plugin does work with Davinci Resolve, Premiere Pro, After Effects, and Final Cut Pro. Those are all the software that it's been verified to be used in, that the plugin's actually designed to be used in so far. I think that covers majority of what people would use anyways, other than, say, was it Sony Vegas? I think that's the... Now, if you don't have yourself any of that software, you can just get a free copy of Davinci Resolve and then just chuck the plug in then. I use Davinci personally. I've used Premiere, After Effects. I haven't used Final Cut, but I do use Davinci because it has basically all the tools I need in the one software bundle. It has, I can do motion graphics, I can do editing, color grading, compositing. Let's do a deep dive and test out, and I'll show you what I've been doing in my DaVinci Resolve projects. Now first, before I jump in, I will tell you where I use Dehancer and where I wouldn't use Dehancer. So Dehancer is a really, really handy tool for adding character, adding that dynamic, I would say, at the end of your pipeline. Now, if you want to do it at the start of your pipeline, you'd be really limiting yourself to what you can do, unless you're not doing a heap of custom, if you're fine with the color being compressed right at the start. Now, within the node tree, before you do set up your Dehancer, make sure, number one, you get your white balance. Number two, you get your contrast right, because as soon as you pump that into Dehancer, you are going to be limiting the color space of that image. You can chuck Davinci Wide Gamut into it too, it takes that as well. I would recommend doing your color space transform into Davinci Wide Gamut, setting up all your white balance, your contrast, anything creative you want to do, and then using Dehancer at the end of your pipeline to really hone in on that film look and add your bloom, add your grain, do whatever you want to do. If I'm in a hurry, for sure, I just use Dehancer. As long as I get if I get my contrast right, I just chuck Dehancer in, 3-node setup, white balance, contrast, Dehancer. Now let's look at this project that I've been working on. Basically, I started with my footage, got all my footage into my timeline, and then I went onto the color page. Now let's look how I would use this in my node tree with all my footage, all my color grading, because Dehancer isn't an all-in-one tool. It's designed for emulating film. It's not designed for doing everything that Resolve can do, or else there would be no point to have Resolve. You may as well just have Dehancer. Let's have a look at how I would construct my node tree, just some basic understanding of how I would apply Dehancer to my node structure for color grading. Now, if you have a look in here, you can see I do have a few grades before I actually get to my FX little node, which is my Dehancer plugin. Let's go one by one. I exposed it brighter than it needed to be, so I could get as much detail in the shadows as I could. So my primary balance was dropping shadows. And now, reminder, this is just a quickly made node tree, but this is basic what I do before I would put it through Dehancer. Second node, bring the gamma down, bring the lift down a little bit more, having that contrast, adding contrast to the image itself, so then it's not just this flat image when I'm chucking in Dehancer. From that, I added some color separation. I moved all of the yellows towards a more magenta, orange section. I like the magenta and the deep. I wanted the wood in the background to look really deep. From that, I go into my third node, which is my saturation slider. It's just a HSL node where I brought the gamma up a bit to increase that saturation in the image itself. Then my fifth node, which I could have compiled these into the same nodes, but my fifth node, it's my main look. I was getting the aesthetic that I was keen to have for my shoot. I wanted a very moody, more grungy kind of aesthetic. And now my Sony camera is actually ridiculously good at capturing a clean image. Kind of makes me unhappy sometimes. To get the final result, so you can see I do all this and it still has that clinical look to it. Now I chuck Dehancer on there. There is so much character to the image. But basically my whole node structure is adjusting the clips to get them the best looking that I can get them before I apply Dehancer. Throughout this project, I had all my Dehancer nodes on the timeline level. So I did all my adjustments like white balancing and trying to match the cameras as best as I could in the nodes themselves. Then on the timeline, I chucked in the basic creative look. So adjusting, you can see I adjust the colors ever so slightly, and it's the brightness. So let's open up a new project and I'll show you Dehancer from step one. So the image you can see, it's very yellow, out of balance. It looks a bit nasty, to be honest. And workflows, let's do 3 nodes and I'll do color space transforms, grab my CSD. So I've just done basic offset adjustment just to get the image sitting in a place that I would like it to sit in. I do some basic hue versus hue color transforms just to get rid of that yellow hue and move it towards more of a reddy, deep wood kind of vibe in the background. Now let's chuck on Dehancer and we look at all the features that I'm currently on Dehancer 7. Source is Davinci Wide Gamut because that's the color space we're working in. We don't want everything enabled. We don't want the look that's already applied to it. So let's go through all the settings and change them. I've got it set to Rec 709 currently, but whatever you have the color space in, whatever you've got it set to before you get to the Dehancer node is whatever you would set it to in the Dehancer node. So say I transformed the CST into Davinci Wide Gamut. I'd set it to Davinci Wide Gamut in Dehancer Pro, and then I'm assuming it must convert it to Rec 709. So this is all set up. Nothing's turned on. Let's have a look at what it has. So I have my source. I can change it to whatever I want it to be as the source. I can do exposure compensation, temperature compensation. So I can do some basic adjustments to the temperature and stuff too. I think it looks fine as we've already adjusted that. That's another thing we'll add is with the Dehancer plugin, you can't do a lot of individual saturation controls, any of the curves, that kind of stuff, you are quite limited in those areas. Now, this is one of the key parts, is the film profile. If I enable this, you can see they have a variety of different film prints that you can try and emulate. You have your Fujis, your Kodaks, Conics, Lomochrome. So Lord of the Rings used one of the Kodak Vision film prints, and we actually have the option to do an emulation of one of those prints. And now you can push and pull, I'm assuming, the contrast in the print itself. So you see it takes away a lot of the color as well. As you change this, you can see the exposure changes a bit. You can just dial it in to the vibe that you want to have for your image. I'm not the biggest fan of the film side of things, though I do actually really like this Kodak Vision 3500D. The way that it just changes the skin tones, and like it flattens out the contrast while not being ridiculously no contrast. It does have a lot of character to it. I think the real character comes from the compression and the film developers. Let's have a look at the film developer. I can do a lot of boost contrast, gamma corrections, color separation, all that kind of stuff from this film developer. And I'm actually pretty sure that the color boost, so the color boost is just our saturation slider. Color separation. I like Dehancer. Everything's quite well organized, but the whole purpose of it is to emulate that film. It does have a lot of tools that are in Davinci, obviously, because it's using the tools of Davinci. Basically, the film compression gradually changes the dynamics in the image to make it look like it's compressed, like it's not quite clipping, but almost clipping. And you can change the amount of tone or range it has. I find Dehancers really good at helping you control the expansion of colors within the color space that you're editing. I found it really easy to control the colors on my footage that I was editing of my poppy in the previous shots by using Dehancer to basically compact the colors so there's not too much dynamic, while also not just ripping it all away and make this flat, boring image. Black point, white point, pretty self-explanatory. It's basically exactly the same as you'd be doing if you were doing a lot of lift and gain. Now let's look at print. So you also have print options, and I'm not super experienced in print. I haven't used this a heap, but you can get some interesting looking image. It has a lot of features that help you basically limit the colors to what it would be like with film, but also keep all the contrast. And they've done a lot of research in this to make it as close to emulating real film as you can be without actually shooting on real film. And I'm loving this. As much as I've used it, I'm loving it. I do really like it. I like the controls, everything's self-explanatory, and there's a lot of science behind all this stuff that I am not experienced in at all. These are some of the best features that Dehancer has to offer, which is the film grain. You can emulate different film grains from different ISOs and different sizes of the film prints. Like you got 65mm, 35mm, 16mm, 8mm with different ISOs. You can change the amount of grain that's in it, and if I zoom in, you can see that there's a lot of grain in this shot right now. But I can pull it back. But the crazy thing is with the grain, it also animates. So you don't have to worry about doing your stupid fusion animations, setting keyframes, typing little code and stuff to get something that looks nice. You can do it right in the software right here. Halation is one of my favorite things to add into my image. Now, I do think the 35 is always too big for me. I'm not a fan of really thick halation. I like it just being there without being square. Without you being able to see it. I like having halation that it isn't super obvious to you. Now you can also see the mask itself, which is really handy, especially if you don't want to affect too much. You can see how much you're putting into it without destroying your image. Especially on smaller screens too, because on the smaller screens it's much harder to see what you're doing than if you chuck it on your TV. Now Bloom is also good. I like Bloom. It adds that dreamy feel, but I don't like too much of it. It also has masking modes. Film damage, I'm pretty sure it's the little white dots and little hairs and stuff, I think. But yeah, you can change the jitter of it and stuff. I think it's pretty cool. I wouldn't use it on just regular shoots and stuff. I'd only use it if I'm trying to get a lot of character and make it look like it was shot on, say, an old VHS recorder kind of. So film breath just affects the colors of the image itself as the film goes on. So you can see how the colors are kind of contrasting going. You can see greens just pop up every now and then. So gate weave is just when film is being moved, it's being filmed. It sometimes unevenly shoots. You can emulate on here as well. You can change the impact. I love all these effects, you can change how much of it is affected and that kind of stuff, which is really handy if you want to really dial in those effects. Which means you can also get a more perfect simulation of whatever you're trying to achieve with the look itself. And overscan, you can change the sizing of it, exposure of it. It's really cool if you want to have dynamic looking image. I think it's good for what they give you. The amount of controls in Dehancer is really, really good. I am impressed with how much they've put into this software itself. It isn't the one that does all when it comes to Davinci Resolve. There is still so much that you would do without using Dehancer, but Dehancer is one way you can add the characteristics of imperfection. One of the main things that has come to filmmaking nowadays is that everything is perfectly clean, crisp, quality, but you don't have the organic character. And organic is the thing that we all love because it's what we're used to. Everything around us is organic, we are organic. Everything's natural, imperfect. Life isn't supposed to be perfect. And so when you can create those more organic film looks, which we are used to from older films, it adds that character and almost nostalgia. I would say this adds a little nostalgia to your filming, to your editing, because it just adds that, it gives birth to more lifelike footage, I suppose. It's how I would remember stuff, is in a more film look instead of everything being crisp and clear. There's a time and place for everything, but in most situations, I actually really, really like using the film look, unless I was delivering content to a client of mine who needs to use it for their own editing. I would do that clean, but Dehancer gives me everything I want, especially if I'm doing short films and that kind of stuff. If you're using overscan, I would recommend either shooting at a lower frame rate or just getting rid of frames, doing drop frame. Vignette, I think it's pretty handy to have vignette in here, since you can do some quick changes and stuff without having to make a mask. And you can also monitor all of your changes via this as well. Effects themselves, so then you can tone it back if you think it's too much. And the cool thing about all of these is you can keyframe every single thing, except obviously like the source and stuff, or your profiles. But every other control in here, all the sliders, you can keyframe them all. Let's talk about one of the new releases of Dehancer's iOS software. Now, they've recently just come out and released an option to do both photo and video film emulation on their iOS software. That's pretty cool because originally it could only do photos and stuff with it, but now you can have videos and do your phone editing as well if you want to emulate film or that kind of stuff. Now let's open up the software itself and I'll find myself. So the first one's the cropping tool. Pretty explanatory. Cropping tools in most photo softwares. Exposure, temperature, etc. straight from the source. Your tints, defringing, all the tools you would need to fix up an image from whatever it's shot on. Now you've got your film, and this just does an overall preset film look based on what the different film prints would do in real life. And it's pretty handy since you can adjust the exposure values for it. You can even filter what prints you want to see in your preset section here. Now let's go to the developer. You have all the options to do like contrast boost, gamma correction, color separation, color boost, etc. Color boost is basically saturation, color separation, it's almost like vibrance. Now let's look at the compression side of things. You can change the impact of the edits themselves. Now you get a white point, you can change your white points, you can change your tonal range, how much tonality is in it. I like this tonal range slider because in a lot of my images, I find sometimes they're too dynamic or not dynamic enough. And with this tonal range, I can dial it into exactly how much dynamic I want in the image itself. And color density, once again, adds a bit of vibrance to the image. Now you can change your black points and your white points to expand the image a bit. Color modes, you have your luma and your normal, just like before. What makes Dehancer different to every other editing software is the fact that you can do the emulations of the prints. And in the app here, you can see that you can choose what prints you want to emulate. Now it's not a heap of prints in here right now, but so far you got your Kodak, you got your good Kodaks, glossy, and then Fujifilm, and then just the linear. And then I always love the analog range limiter because it's really crushes it down to analog vibe. Like it hasn't got too many colors. I mean, analog captures a lot of colors, but the print itself don't always capture everything that a Sony camera would capture because the Sony has so many different pixels reading different colors and that kind of stuff. It doesn't look so clinical with the analog range limiter, which I like. There are a lot of prints that will have massive ranges, but it adds the character. Like I'm saying before, all of this is always to create character. You want character in your images to create that authenticity and for at least me to want to watch it. Then you've got your color heads, which you can adjust all the individual colors, how they're affected, like they would be on prints, film prints, and then your exposures, impacts, which can change how much it's affected again. Film grain, which is pretty handy. It's not animated like it would be in the videos on this at least, but you can add some film grain to make it look like it was shot on film. And since it's an image, you don't need animated film grain because, well, there's only a still image captured. It'd be shot on one bit of film. Halation, I love halation. I always like to go 60, just so it's not overkill. But you can't really see it with this film grain. I'll turn this film grain off. Now I'm going a bit overkill with all these settings just so I can show you exactly what you can do. And then you can change your vignette. Do that, film damage. And there you have it. That is a basic view of what it would be like to be editing with Dehancer. Now that's just a base outline of what you can do with the app itself. There's loads of tools. You can create a very aesthetic, interesting looking shot. But there is so many controls in there that whatever is in your head, you can probably create with it. I like this for quick editing, making some nice dreamy looking shots. And I'm definitely going to be using this if I ever need to edit on my phone. It offers all the tools a lot of other softwares do. Plus, it also has all these film emulations and they look really realistic and authentic, and I really, really like it. Dehancer is both an emulation for video, but also for photo. And it mainly started out as a photo software itself. So the Standalone app isn't a video app, but it is a photo app. So it's a basic photo editor plus with all your film emulations and that kind of stuff. So let's have a peek at it right now and I'll tell you a bit about it. So in this software, you have the basic controls like your exposure, your temperature, your tints, your defringe radius. You can also enable and disable film profiles, film developer, compression, expand, and a few different options. Now you can choose whichever ones you want to activate or don't want to activate. If you're using this, I assume you probably want to try out the film profiles, and it basically is the emulation of a film print itself. So let's go find the Kodak Vision 250D. This should be the film print that I'm pretty sure was filmed on with Lord of the Rings a lot. I googled it a bit. I wanted to learn which film print was used when I was using Dehancer, so then I tried it out. And it does have quite a nice aesthetic. Not quite what I was wanting for the shot itself, but you can adjust it to like make something look nice with that print. Though this image has been edited, this is just a cut from my previously edited footage in Resolve, so it's already been color graded. But I'm just showing you exactly what you can do with the software itself. So you have your film developer, you have your film compression, you can expand, adjust your white and black points to change the contrast and contours on the image. Your prints, which you can change the different kind of, different kind of paper, I guess. But I always like to use the analog range limiter whenever I'm using this software and bring the saturation down a little bit. I don't like oversaturated images. That's just my thing though. I'm sure a lot of people do. Changing color density, bringing saturation down plus bringing color density up actually makes such a cool looking image, because it's like desaturated while having really warm tones in the image. Sometimes it's a bit overkill, but I like the vibe that it gives. Now color head, I don't exactly remember what it does scientifically wise on film, but it basically adjusts how colors are absorbed into the film itself. And you can change the different tonality of different sections of the image. Adjusting your film grain, halation, your bloom, and your film damage as per usual with all the rest of the softwares, and the overscan, as you can see in every other one of the plugins and softwares. You have all the basic features and it goes across all the different software. And I'm actually really impressed that the phone also has all these features, except for the wide list of film prints themselves. It does have a few, which I'm impressed with. Dehancer is a really cool plugin for anyone interested in emulating film or adding character to their videos without having to do some crazy color grades. And it has so many versatile controls within the software itself that you can basically create whatever image you want. I'm actually really impressed with it. Now, one thing that this would go really well with is a lens emulation plugin. So you can change your lenses to like wider, the different bokehs and that kind of stuff. But standalone, I like the colors that come out of this. I'm actually really impressed with the colors. I do reckon a lot of the controls could be more concise, but overall, I'm happy with where it's at. I'm gonna be using this a lot. I already started using it and I would suggest that you guys give it a go. See if you can create some cool images with it. Because I can only go so far with Davinci's in-app controls, in-software controls, without putting a lot of work into different node trees, structures, and that kind of stuff. But Dehancer's plugin simplifies whatever my node tree would be to create the effects, the colors, the contrast that I would have to create, if I wanted to have those same effects. It's easy to create character with this software. Now, when wouldn't I use it? I wouldn't use it if I want super clean images. The whole purpose of this is to emulate film, is to create that really, really cool aesthetic. So if you want a clean image, definitely I wouldn't be putting Dehancer onto it. Another time I wouldn't be using Dehancer is as the basis for my color correction, because the whole point of it is, once again, is to emulate the film, to add that character to it. It's not to be a full-on editing software. Now, they do have their standalone software for photos, but for videos, I would definitely recommend doing your adjustments before you put Dehancer on there. Dehancer is a tool to help assist in getting the look you want. It isn't designed to be doing everything. Those are the only 2 real times I wouldn't use Dehancer. Every other instance, whenever I'm making footage or content and stuff, I'd be keen to use Dehancer in basically everything. I love it. It's a really fun tool to use. But for all my future projects, when it comes to like interviews, all that kind of stuff, even short films, I'm definitely going to be using Dehancer. And I'd say you guys should give it a go as well. Let me know what you think, and I'll give you a link below to be able to get onto there easy. But I look forward to seeing what you guys create, what you guys do, and let me know what you guys are creating, what you want me to create. And yeah, let's just create this community, make this community flourish to be like this fun community, filmmaking community. I want to hear from you. You guys should want to hear from me, so we can connect, have some fun. Yeah, this is me, Selby. I'll catch you next time. Get out of here.